My name is Clara Hayes. I'm 32 years old, and I'm a museum archivist. The scent of roasting lamb and my mother's overly sweet perfume usually means family dinner, but tonight it was Elara's engagement party. My sister, radiant in a cream silk dress, laughed as my father made a toast. I'd spent the last 2 months meticulously preparing a grant proposal for a rare collection, finally getting the official approval that morning. I was bursting to share it, even a small detail, but the moment never seemed to arrive. As the dessert plates were cleared, I finally found a lull, clearing my throat slightly. I actually had some good news today, I began, my voice a little too eager. My mother, however, was already turning to Elara, her eyes shining. "Oh, darling, tell us again about the caterers you're considering for the wedding. You're just so organized, so on top of everything. Really, Elara, you are the only one worth celebrating in this family." The words, a familiar knife, twisted in a new way this time. It wasn't just a slight, it was a complete erasure. A lifetime of being overlooked, of my achievements being diminished, culminated in that single, casual sentence. Something inside me, a tightly wound spring, finally gave way. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply stood up from the table, my chair scraping softly against the polished wood. My parents, still beaming at Elara, barely noticed. I walked slowly towards the mantelpiece, where the ornate silver frame, a family heirloom, prominently displayed Elara's engagement photo. With a quiet, deliberate motion, I picked it up and gently, but firmly, turned it face down. "Then I suppose I'm not needed here," I said, my voice barely a whisper, yet it cut through the room's celebratory hum. Then I turned and walked out, leaving behind the stunned silence and the lingering smell of lamb. It was the first time I had truly chosen myself, and I knew, even then, that nothing would ever be the same. To understand why that moment, that particular phrase, finally broke me, you need to know about the silver frame. It wasn't just a decorative object, it was the family's rotating shrine to Elara. From her first grade art award to her high school graduation, her acceptance into art school, her first gallery show, that frame always held her latest triumph. I remember when I won the district science fair in 7th grade. My project on soil erosion was meticulously researched, and I'd spent months in the garage. My parents were proud, in their way, but when I brought home the blue ribbon, the silver frame already held a photo of Elara's abstract painting, which had won Most Creative at her school's annual exhibition. My ribbon was tucked into a drawer, eventually forgotten. Elara, 2 years older than me, was always the golden child. She was vivacious, artistic, and effortlessly charming. I was the quiet one, the bookworm, the sensible one who preferred the company of historical texts to large crowds. My parents, bless their hearts, saw this as a deficiency rather than a difference. Elara's every whim was indulged, her every artistic endeavor lauded as genius. My academic achievements, my passion for history, my meticulous nature, these were often met with a pat on the head and a suggestion that I'd loosen up. I learned early on to temper my expectations. When I graduated from college with honors, my parents' main concern was Elara's recent breakup, which had happened a week before my ceremony. "She needs you, Clara," my mother had said, pressing a tissue into my hand. "This is a difficult time for her. Your graduation can wait for a proper celebration." The proper celebration never truly materialized, and within days, the silver frame held a photo of Elara smiling bravely with her new, rebound boyfriend. I remember looking at it, a dull ache in my chest, and thinking, of course. A few years later, I landed my dream job as an archivist at the city's most prestigious historical museum. It was a competitive position, requiring extensive knowledge and a meticulous eye for detail. I called my parents, genuinely excited, my voice trembling with pride. My mother listened patiently, then said, "That's nice, dear. Elara's gallery show opens next month. You should come help her hang some pieces. She could really use your organizational skills." My achievement, my professional milestone, was instantly relegated to a footnote, a convenient excuse to enlist my help for Elara. The silver frame, predictably, displayed a glossy invitation to Elara's exhibition. It was a pattern, a relentless drumbeat of Elara first, Clara somewhere else. The pattern continued, growing more pronounced as we entered our 30s. For my 30th birthday, I planned a small, intimate gathering with a few close friends. My parents, however, insisted on hosting a family dinner the following week. I arrived, hoping for a modest celebration, but it quickly morphed into an impromptu fundraiser for Elara's new art studio. My father, with a flourish, made a toast not to me, but to Elara's bright future and boundless talent, while I sat there, having quietly paid for most of the expensive dinner. The silver frame, of course, proudly showcased a photo of Elara, paint-splattered and beaming, in her new studio. I remember looking at the untouched slice of cake in front of me, the sweetness suddenly cloying. It was around that time that I started to truly see the insidious nature of their favoritism. It wasn't just that they loved Elara more, it was that they actively devalued my existence, my efforts, my very being. My life, my passions, my hard-won successes were not just secondary, they were, in my parents' eyes, fundamentally less worthy of attention, less real. It wasn't about Elara being better, it was about me being less. This recognition was a slow, painful burn, like discovering a long-standing structural flaw in a building you thought was your home. I started talking to my friend, Sarah, a fellow archivist, about it. Sarah, always pragmatic, listened patiently. "Clara," she said one afternoon, "you're an archivist. You document things. Start documenting this." Her words resonated with me. I started a private journal, a simple notebook tucked away in my desk drawer. I noted dates, specific comments, and my feelings. I wrote down how my mother would ask about my grant proposal, only to cut me off mid-sentence to discuss Elara's latest art commission. I documented the times my father would joke about my dusty old books, while praising Elara's vibrant, modern art. I even pulled out old birthday cards. The messages from my parents were almost identical for both Elara and me, but Elara's always came with a larger check or a more personal, thoughtful gift. I found a photo of myself from my high school graduation, tucked away in an old box, not in any of the meticulously curated family albums. It was a blurry, slightly off-center shot, a stark contrast to the perfectly composed, framed photos of Elara. Each entry, each discovery, was a quiet, damning piece of evidence, not for a court case, but for my own internal reckoning. A quiet resolve began to build, a steady, unyielding pressure behind my ribs. Then came Elara's engagement dinner. I had spent weeks on that grant proposal, poured my heart and soul into it. It was a significant professional achievement, one that would bring new recognition to the museum. I had genuinely believed that this time, perhaps, my parents would see it, acknowledge it. I had tried to share the news, a hopeful, vulnerable offering. But my mother's words, "Elara, you are the only one worth celebrating in this family," were the final, unbearable weight. The spring snapped. I remember the exact feeling, a sudden, profound calm washing over me, a clarity I hadn't known before. There was no anger, no tears, just a stark understanding. They truly believed it. And if they believed it, then I had no place there. The silence after I turned the silver frame face down and spoke my quiet exit line was deafening. I could feel their eyes on my back as I walked out the front door, the cool night air a welcome shock against my flushed cheeks. My phone began to vibrate almost immediately in my purse. First my mother, then my father, then Elara. I ignored them all. I drove home in a daze, the silence in my car a stark contrast to the emotional cacophony I'd left behind. I didn't answer their calls or texts for 24 hours. I needed that time to process, to solidify my new boundary. The next evening, I sent a single text message to our family group chat. "I will not apologize for reacting to being told I am not worth celebrating. I need space." The response was immediate and furious. My mother called, her voice shrill with indignation. "How could you ruin Elara's night? You're always so dramatic, Clara. You owe us an apology." My father sent a stern email, accusing me of being selfish and jealous. Elara, surprisingly, called sounding genuinely confused, asking why I had to make a scene. I didn't engage. I didn't respond to their demands, their accusations, their attempts to gaslight me into believing I was the one in the wrong. The fallout was swift and predictable. My parents called other relatives, painting me as the ungrateful, envious sister who had sabotaged a joyous occasion. Some relatives, predictably, sided with my parents, sending me thinly veiled messages about family loyalty. But others, quietly, reached out to me. My Aunt Carol, my mother's sister, sent me a text. "It was about time, honey. You deserve better." That message, a small act of validation, meant more to me than any grand gesture. I decided to limit contact, to create the space I truly needed. I missed a few family dinners, a holiday gathering. The silence from them was at times painful, a stark reminder of the family I thought I had. But it was also liberating. I poured my energy into my work, into the grant my parents had dismissed, and into my friendships. Sarah and our other colleagues at the museum celebrated my grant with a small luncheon, genuinely enthusiastic about the opportunities it would bring. I started to feel, for the first time, truly seen and celebrated for who I was, not for how I fit into someone else's narrative. Weeks later, my mother called, attempting to smooth things over. She spoke in her usual placating tone, but still subtly shifted the blame, implying I had overreacted. "We just want our family back, Clara," she said, her voice laced with a familiar manipulative edge. "But you have to meet us halfway." I held my ground. "Mom," I said, my voice calm and steady, "until you can acknowledge that my achievements matter, too, that I matter, I can't be part of these discussions." The conversation ended quickly after that. The relationship was irrevocably changed. It wasn't a complete cut-off, but it was distant, guarded, and defined by my new, firm boundaries. Now, I sit at my desk at the museum, surrounded by the quiet hum of history. On my desk, in a small, simple wooden frame, is a photo of me and Sarah, smiling brightly, a celebratory cake between us from the day my grant was formally announced. I look at it, then think of the ornate silver frame back at my parents' house. It's probably still face down on the mantelpiece, or perhaps my mother has tucked it away, waiting for me to come to my senses. But it no longer holds any power over me. Some things, once broken, can never be perfectly reassembled. And sometimes, that's exactly how they were meant to be.